Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Many plants just don't want to grow if you put the seeds in the ground. Today we're going to start some seeds indoors. Also, it's spring and the berries are getting ready to produce. Today we're going to check on how they are doing. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Dr. Natalie Baumgartner. Dr. Natalie is the Tennessee Extension Master Gardener State Coordinator, and Mr. D is here with us.
Howdy.
Thanks for joining us. All right, Doc. So everybody always asks the question about starting seeds indoors. Can you help us out with that?
Right, there are some great reasons why we would start seeds indoors. Oftentimes it's just for timing, right? We don't want to wait for tomatoes to go all the way to production from a seed in our garden. And often it is also because we can provide the best, most tailored conditions for our seeds, especially our warm season crops that require high germination temperatures to produce and get started well. And of course, it's a little bit of winter therapy. So sometimes we start seeds just because we love doing this in January and February and March when the weather's poor.
Yeah, winter therapy. I like that. Good one. Yeah. So what kind of materials would we need to start those seeds indoors?
Yeah, so we're going to start by deciding on containers that we can seed into. Okay. So lots of times what we'll do is start with a small tray where we'll seed things close together and then transplant up. So that's kind of what I have here. This is a small seedling tray where we'll get them started. They'll grow for a couple of weeks. We'll get to true leaves. Okay. And then we'll transplant them up to a larger container that will take them to transplant into our garden. We can start with a small divided container like I have here for seeding, or we can just open seed, but this will kind of be a two-step process. Okay.
Now, will folks have to buy these, or can you substitute these with something else that they may have at home, or what do you think? What's the best way to do that?
Well, one of the best things about getting these is that they're sterile, they're clean. Okay. We don't have to worry about bringing in any plant pathogens that might already be in them. Okay. However, if you have something that drains well, you can absolutely start seedlings in them. The nice thing about some of these supplies are that they're sized to fit together well, right? Okay. So you can get a seedling starting tray that fits well on a heat mat. So sometimes it's also a sizing issue, but cleanliness and drainage are the most important things as far as selecting containers. Okay. You can also get single-use containers that kind of take out one step. This is a Jiffy peat pellet that expands from this size to this size, and so you can directly seed into this and then take it into the garden without needing that extra transplant step.
Okay. All right. Now, what about media?
Right. So the most important thing about container media is to think about what its purpose is. Okay. So its purpose is to both hold water but also drain really well.
Hold water, but drain well.
Right. Yeah, and so it sounds conflicting, but the right materials bring those two factors together really well. Okay. And what we have here is a seed starting mix that has a lot of fine peat moss and just a little bit of small perlite there. And it's designed to be able to keep your seeds moist and get them germinated well. Okay. When we transplant up to a larger size, we'll use a little bit of a larger particle size mix. We can see larger chunks and larger pieces of perlite, and that way we'll get better drainage when we get into larger containers like this. The other great thing about many of these small germination mixes is they have a little bit of fertilizer charge in them. How about that? So they get us started off well with a little bit of nutrients.
Okay, so these are readily available. You can find these at any big box store?
Absolutely, box stores, garden centers. In fact, many of these materials I purchased on my drive over last night. So Jiffy pellets are easy to find, germination mixes, and many times these containers, here's one with a small germination dome. Those can be handy for increasing the temperature and the humidity, but you got to be careful. Don't put those in direct sunlight. They will heat up very quickly. So all of these materials are pretty readily available. Good. And then I also have a small heat mat here, which for our peppers and tomatoes, which really like close to 80-degree germination temperatures, many of our watermelons and things like that, it's great even if we're germinating in our house. Keep our house 72, we can keep our heat mat 80 degrees.
That's pretty good. All right, so we talked about temperature. What about air movement? That's important, right?
Yeah. I think that that's probably one of the things that trips up early seed starters the most, and that is we keep our media too moist or there's no air movement. And so we want, as the plants are growing, for that germination media to dry out a little bit. We don't want it to dry out completely, but when we water, we want to be able to see that it's drying out a little bit on top, and it's air movement that helps do that. So small fans and interior circulation fans can be really handy. We don't want gale force winds on our young plants, but air movement does help them.
Right.
Yeah, reduce disease and keep the media from staying too moist.
Good points. Yeah. All right, so let's start some seeds.
All right, let's start some seeds.
All right.
So I have a few examples of just some packets. Lots of times they'll come in foil, which is good to keep the humidity low. Depending upon where you buy them and what you buy, sometimes you might find a few seeds that actually have a little bit of fungicide on them. So these are pepper seeds that have a little bit of a fungicide there, and that is to support germination, right? If we can keep them from getting too moist and rotting and deteriorating before they come up, that can be an asset. The other thing that I brought, I'm just going to go ahead and place these here in one of my rows.
So just right on top?
Yeah, so I'll place them right on top, and then most of the time I'll cover, make sure that that they don't get into their neighbor's container, and then I'll just cover lightly. We don't need much cover. Mostly we just want something that keeps our seed universally moist. And tags. Yeah. The other thing that I brought were, so those were pepper seeds that we just planted. These are actually lettuce seeds. Can you tell?
Wow.
Not really, right?
No.
So these are actually pelleted seeds, and for many of our really small seeded crops like lettuce or basil or carrots, pelleted seeds can be a lot easier for us to handle. Okay. And so these can be a large asset. They can also provide some benefits in helping them germinate a little bit more evenly and
there's just one seed in each of those pellets?
There's just one seed in each of these pellets, and what that is a clay material that's just wound around them, that kind of think of a big tumbler. It's almost like a washing machine that just thinly coats these, and when they take up water, that seed coat will, it'll either just slough off, or sometimes it'll almost crack like an egg.
Wow.
And they're even organically approved pelleting, so there's lots of different options in pelleting material, and so we can just
wow, that really helps, because lettuce seeds are so small.
They're just easier to handle. There, I'll put a couple in that peat pellet. It has a nice little dibble there in the middle, and then we can just cover these guys up with a light layer of ProMix, and then mist them in, whether with a little spray nozzle or even with a mist nozzle that fits on the end of your hose. You have to be gentle.
Right.
Regular,
not too much.
Yeah, regular hose strength would
knock them out.
blow this growing media everywhere.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
Yeah, so a mist nozzle is great, and then we'll place it on our heating mats, make sure we provide the right temperature, almost 80 degrees for many of our warm season crops, a nice 70 to 75 for some of our lettuce, and in a couple weeks for many of our tomatoes or lettuce, might be closer to 3 for peppers, we'll be ready to fill our growing tray with a grow mix and transplant these guys up.
Good information.
Yeah.
Like that demonstration. Thank you much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. Mr. D, let's take a look at our blueberry plantings and see if we need to do anything to them.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
They look pretty good.
All right.
I'm impressed.
So not too bad, you think?
They're the growth, you have new growth, you've got a lot of blooms. Now we had some cold weather a couple of weeks ago, and if these were in full bloom at that time, we might have lost some, but they appear, you know, the petals are falling off, and underneath the brown petals, they appear to be pretty healthy. So I think we're going to have a few blueberries. We don't need a lot of blueberries on a plant this small, because we're still trying to produce a plant. I've got the fertilizer, 2/10 of a pound of triple 15 is recommended for maintenance on these plants, and that's not a lot.
No,
you don't put a lot of fertilizer on blueberries, and you need to stay away from nitrate forms of nitrogen with blueberries. So later this year we might need to add a little nitrogen, and if we do, we will use ammonium sulfate.
Okay.
The sulfur will help lower the pH. We also need to pull a soil sample or check the pH. We don't necessarily need to do a full soil sample, but we need to check the pH and find out where we are, because we might need to add some more sulfur to get the pH.
Do you remember what it was when we first started?
Did we soil test this when we first started? I don't remember whether or not we soil tested it when we
had
first
to go back
started.
and check
I do know
that
that
out.
the vegetable garden very close, it was really high.
Okay.
With the vegetable garden very close.
Okay.
It was like 8, I think. And so, but the sulfur that we put out at planting has done a good job, or the plants would not look this good.
Okay. Sure.
So I'm going to go on and try to kind of scatter this around, and I'm trying to encourage the roots to go out, to spread out. So I'm going to get a little distance from the plant and scatter this, try to scatter it very in a balanced form. One thing we're going to need to do in the next few weeks is probably come out here with a grass herbicide that won't hurt blueberries and try to knock this Bermuda grass back.
Okay.
Let me.
Yeah, that Bermuda's starting to come out now.
Yeah, I think we're late enough that we should be past any danger of a killing frost.
Okay. Let's hope so. And why are you doing it, Mr. D? Are blueberries shallow rooted or pretty deep root system?
They're pretty shallow. You know, they're going to be in the top soil.
Okay.
So they're going to be pretty shallow rooted. For that reason, you don't want to do a lot of deep cultivation around them. But they're pretty shallow rooted.
Okay. All right. Guess we'll check this one out.
Same thing with this one.
Okay. So you think this is growing pretty good?
Yeah. I like the color. The leaves look good and healthy.
They do.
I'm impressed. We did good.
And we need to make sure we get that watered in too, right?
I wouldn't worry about it.
Wouldn't worry about it?
Because it's water soluble. I think we've got a forecast of rain in the next couple of days.
Okay.
So I wouldn't worry. I let Mother Nature water it in, and if Mother Nature doesn't water it in, it's not going anywhere.
That's right.
It'll just make it a little bit more slow release.
Okay, I got you.
But the blueberries look good. I'm impressed with them.
Good. So you think we'll see a few blueberries? A few?
I think we'll have a few blueberries this year, and which is good. The first year, after you plant them, it's kind of, you don't expect a real big yield.
Oh, okay.
But we may have enough to put little blueberries on top of a little ice cream or something, or in the cereal, in a bowl of cereal. Yeah.
I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
All right, let's walk over here to
Let's check blackberries out.
Blackberries and see how the blackberries are doing. Okay.
Blackberries look pretty good too.
Yeah, not too bad, huh?
Yeah.
What do you think?
They need a little fertilizer too, and I've pre-measured the fertilizer out, just like we did for the blueberries. Let me, I think I do need to do a little bit of pruning.
Okay. Yeah,
the only pruning I'm going to do is this dead cane.
Right.
I'm going to take it off. That's pretty much it. There may be a tip right over here I'm going to take off. It's dead.
Okay.
Okay. That took care of that. But that's all the pruning we've got to do right now.
They look good.
The fertilizer, I think the rate is 3.3 pounds of triple 15 per 100 foot of row. And I figure we have about 24 feet here. Figures out 6.3 ounces.
Okay.
And that's what we've got. So I'm going to kind of do the same thing. I'm going to try to put about half of it out on this side of the plant and half of it on the other. But it looks good.
It does.
About to bloom. Getting close to blooming.
Good blooms.
So you're going to have some blackberries here.
Cool.
This year. Again, we don't need a lot of fruit on this younger plant. It's always good to have a little bit though.
Okay.
See what it's going to taste like. But we're in the process of growing the vines, and it won't be long and this whole trellis is going to be full. Trust me.
Good.
All right, here we go.
So again, we're going to let Mother Nature water that in for us?
Yeah, let's Mother Nature do that.
Okay.
Kind of enhance the slow release, natural slow release technology here.
Are we going to need more posts, you think?
I don't think so.
You don't think so for this?
I think it'll be fine.
All right.
Okay, perfect. So really, let's just let it grow.
Okay. And these are going up the trellis pretty good here, don't you think?
Yeah. We may have to do a little bit of training. You know, some of these that are kind of going a little wild. As it gets a little bit longer, you may want to tie it up here. But eventually they'll start kind of wrapping in the wire on their own.
Yeah, like that one.
You'll always have to do a little bit of help, but you won't have to do a lot of tying. You can just pull it up and direct it through the wire like that.
Yeah, pretty much like that one.
Good old livestock panel. Pretty good.
Holding up pretty good, huh?
Grape trellis.
Yeah. I'm excited about the blueberries and the blackberries, though.
I like them. They're a pretty much worry-free plant, and you can use them as ornamentals, even an edible ornamental. You know, you could have this up against the side of your house if you wanted to. And same with the blueberries, make corner planting, or you can have a hedge.
Yeah, like I said, we talked about hedges before.
It serves a dual purpose.
All right, Mr. D, we appreciate that. Can't wait
to
see what it looks like later in the season, right?
Yep, we'll be back to kill some weeds.
All right, sounds good.
The strawberries are looking pretty good. We did have some cold weather about a week ago. I think the temperature dropped to about 29 degrees. When you have a bloom on peaches, strawberries, almost anything, open bloom, a good heavy frost will actually kill that bloom. If it's before bloom or after bloom, sometimes it can stand temperatures down to about 28 degrees. So we were in the range of where these strawberries got hit pretty hard. And if you notice, it didn't immediately kill the bloom. Here, it's dark on the inside of this bloom. This is one of the older blooms. That strawberry is dead. It's not going to make it. But if you look at these here to the side, these were probably not in full bloom last week. They were just before bloom, so they were able to handle the 29 degrees. Well, good thing about strawberries, I mean, we could have covered these with straw or with a row cover or something like that and protected the blooms that you had on here, and you would have had earlier strawberries. I mean, your earliest strawberries, may very well be gone, but strawberries will continue to bloom. If you knock all of the blooms off because of a frost, they will start blooming again, and 30 days from when that bloom starts, you'll have ripe fruit.
All right, this is our Q&A session. Y'all ready? We have some good questions here.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's start with the first one. Is there any way to get rid of chameleon plants permanently? And this is from Kathy. So it's the old Houttenia plant is what that is. It's very invasive. So any recommendations to getting rid of?
Well, it's a process, right?
It's a process.
So the chameleon plant is going to be spreading a lot by rhizomes. So understanding how it's moving are pretty important, right? So always, when you remove it, get up as many of those underground stems as possible, and think about that in terms of tilling, right? Terrible way to get rid of it.
Terrible,
right? Because then we'd just be breaking up and getting more propagules.
Right. Any recommendations, chameleon plant?
I didn't even know what a chameleon plant was. So no, I don't have any. I would, but you know me, I would lean toward the herbicide.
Yeah.
And it's a broadleaf, I assume.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
So I would assume that Trimec would be a suitable product. A mixture of 2,4-D,
some
dicamba,
folks would go with glyphosate product.
Yeah.
glyphosate.
You have to be careful if you have any desirable plants in there, though.
Where are they?
Yeah, where are they?
Is chameleon primarily a weed in turf grass, or is it in flower bed?
I generally see the flower beds.
Yeah, I think most people are putting it in as a landscape plant, and then it's much more prolific than they were anticipating.
It's kind of like bamboo.
Yeah.
It's actually a beautiful flower.
Yeah.
But beautiful leaves as well. But yeah. But you know what? The best time to actually control it is in the fall, if you think about it.
When it's taking up.
Yeah, when it's taking,
Kudzu.
Right,
Same way, you know, when it's trying to store up, taking up for the winter.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah, it's pulling it down to the roots. So, whatever comes up in the spring, you just spot spray it.
And the glyphosate would be the product, the systemic.
That's right. I would use the systemic.
And it may actually take a combination of some physical removal.
It will.
And some appropriately applied herbicide.
Right. It will. Again, it's the rhizomes that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So don't get in there and till it and try to break it up, because if you don't get all those pieces out of there, it just comes back.
It comes back.
It comes back. All right, so be careful, Miss Kathy, all right? Here's our next viewer email. Can you take a piece of a muscadine vine and plant it in the ground and get a plant? And this is from Craig in Middleton. So, just a little piece of muscadine vine, right? Come on, Mr. D.
Yeah, muscadines don't propagate well from dormant wood. Muscadines are primarily propagated from softwood cuttings, and that you need to do that in the summertime. And it's a kind of a meticulous thing. The survival rate, if is. I don't know. If you can get 70%, you're doing really good
that's pretty
with muscadines.
high.
And you got to keep it moist. And you do the softwood cuttings. You cut it off back close to where the shoot comes from the vine, and then you trim off the tip of it, and you trim it down to 6 inches, and with no more than 4 nodes. And rooting hormone. You put it in the potting soil. You kind of cover it a little bit, and you make sure it's moist. Yeah. And I saw someone had the key is to keeping it moist enough without keeping it too moist.
Right.
And I saw someone had a homemade rig down when I worked down in Alabama, and it was they used a commode flushing mechanism, and they had some kind of a flap that would hold moisture, and when it dried out, it would come up and it would mist, and it sprayed that flap too.
How about that?
And the muscadines, and then when it got heavy enough, to cut it off. And that's, if you come up with something like that,
Oh man.
But no, you can't just take a piece of muscadine vine that you pruned off, last week, and a dormant vine, and stick it in the ground.
You can do root layering in mid-season too, and that may be for home gardeners the simplest way, because you can bury a piece of growing vine and it will root, and then next year you can divide it.
Almost just lay a brick on it, or something like that. Anything to weigh it down. Yeah, you can do that, layering.
Okay, so you can do layering. All right, so there you have it, Craig. Thanks for the question. Here's our next email. I think Dr. Nally would like this one. Will seeds from a bell pepper actually produce peppers?
Oh, they will.
Yeah. Oh, they will.
Yeah. Now, the challenge here is that if you go to the grocery store and you get a beautiful colored bell pepper, pretty much any bell pepper from the grocery store, it's most likely going to have been grown from a hybrid plant.
Okay.
So that was a cross of 2 very specific parents to get that that mix of attributes that produce the plant that produced that fruit.
Okay.
So if you take that seed and take it home and plant it, you'll get a pepper, but it may not grow to be exactly like what you selected. So that's what we call open pollinated crops, are the ones that we can take seeds from and they will come true. But it is not impossible, right, but uncommon for things that we would buy from the grocery store to be from open pollinated species.
Uncommon, Mr. D.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. It'd be one of the parents, probably.
Right.
Or something that pollinated it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So it'd be a pepper, but it may not be
It'd
identical.
be a pepper.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But would it taste like a pepper?
Oh, it tastes
like a pepper still?
Yeah. It may not be quite as good.
Right.
Yeah. Or mild disease resistant. There may be some things you're missing.
Okay. All right. So, Doc, Mr. D, we're out of time. That was fun. That was fun. Thank you. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about seed starting, blackberries, blueberries, and 100 other things on familyplotgarden.com. It's there to help you have a great garden. I'm Chris Cooper. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.